I don't have to tell you in this town that that government can't do everything, and despite the policies of the day, anybody who actually works in government knows the government can't do everything. Sometimes the citizens have to do it for themselves, and that's the groups that we're talking about today. The civil society groups, the groups who are community members banded together to accomplish something in their communal interest. And they do seem to turn to open source more often than they turn to proprietary software. And the reasons for this are, well, quite obvious. You know, first and foremost, budgets are very, very tight in the community world, and there's nothing that beats free when it comes to helping the bottom line. But they also view open source as a bit of a force multiplier, something that lets a small group accomplish more in a short period of time. And they also see alignment with their morals, their ethics, their guiding values. If you look at the open source world and the world of a lot of community groups, you see that the meritocracy plays a big part in both of them. You see that they value things other than the bottom line, other than money. They believe that there is more to life than this. They value freedom, they value openness, collaboration. All of these things that are played out in open source are also incredibly valuable in the world of these community groups. And New Zealand is no different from the rest of the world in this respect. I lived for 10 years in America, and I saw community groups doing their darndest, doing amazing things with open source tools. And it was wonderful to come back here, be part of the judging committee here, and find, oh my goodness, exactly the same creativity, the same power of production under stress, under demands, under constraints is present here in New Zealand as well. It's lovely to see. And even though, you know, we are geographically isolated, we can do amazing things because of this software that embodies the best practices of a lot of the web and a lot of software design. It gets you off the ground and running fast. So I spent some time in an open source community because open source communities are just like these community groups that we'll be hearing soon. They're interested people banding together to accomplish something together that they couldn't accomplish individually. And I know from experience that it's a thankless job, that it's something that attracts a huge amount of grief. Grief is far from rare in both worlds. But it's also incredibly rewarding and a challenge like no other that you'll find. Like I said, the price is often the attractor for open source, and it's true in businesses as well as in community groups. I've worked with a lot of businesses over my time in the US, and I heard again and again that they first came to open source because it was cheap. It was free. And then they stayed because actually, oh my goodness, it turns out that this free thing is better, it lets us do more, it fits better with our organization. There are many reasons to stay, even if price is what gets you through the door. So the finalists for this Open Source for Community group embody all of these attributes that I've talked about. They vary from big to small. They're doing lots of different things, but they all have it in common that they're supporting their members, which is wonderful. The very first finalist is the VetLearn Foundation, a non-for-profit providing continuing education to the New Zealand veterinary profession. So they've had over 700 students participating in the Vet Scholar program since it was launched in early 2006, which is, if you think about it this way, very impressive, roughly 20% of the entire profession. I would love to have had 20% of any profession go through my hands. That's very powerful. In its first year of operation, Vet Scholar covered all the setup and development costs for the service, which is based on the open source Moodle e-learning platform. This nomination demonstrates that even small not-for-profits can benefit from the open source approach and offer these world-class capabilities to their constituents. Please, a round of applause. And the second nomination is to Citizen Click and Egressive, and this demonstrates this open source as a speed benefit, something that gets you off the starting line faster than other software. So Citizen Click and Christchurch-based Egressive teamed up to deliver in as little as 3 weeks a rich Drupal website for the Onehunga Enhancement Society. And you may notice Drupal being a theme here. As Kate Taylor of Citizen Click said in her nomination, my client is no longer a couple of people with a vision. They're an active group with 200 plus paid up members. And in no small way thanks to the software. Egressive, who are at the centre of an active open source provider network in Christchurch, continues to provide enhancements to the site and plan to feed some of the new features back to the Drupal community. So please, a round of applause for Citizen Click and Aggressive. Third is the Aotearoa Independent Media Centre. And IMC, Aotearoa IMC, are the local node of the global network of independent media centres, which you might know as Indie Media. Publishing the work of the independent citizen journalists and alternative political debate, the IMC has undergone a couple of technology changes in its lifetime, but most notably, New Zealanders are in the process of migrating the IMC to the open source Drupal platform. Indie Media is committed to a free and open source approach from Linux on the desktop to use of open standards to underpin their principles of unity. And I think it's an extremely worthy and notable nomination. Last and far from least is Julian Priest of Consume and WSFII. So Julian, who lives in Wanganui, is the founder of London's Consume network, which was the first large-scale open wireless network in any major international city. That's a huge landmark for a New Zealander to have been a part of. Consume was developed using modular nodes which were largely Linux-based, and later the network also evolved to include the Hive network system, which is entirely open source. So Julian's projects always contain an open source ideology as well as technology, and he's heavily involved in the World Summits on Free Information Infrastructures, WSFII, which many of my friends in the UK went to and had nothing but raves to say and made me very jealous. Please give a big round of applause to Julian Priest. And now the winner is... Blank, I get to write it in. No, wait. The winner is the VetLearn Foundation.